Welcome to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's build video, I've got something a little bit different. Normally, you would show up, I'd say, hey, we're making this prop, we'd make it, and we'd be done. But I've been thinking about this for a while, and I want to do a series kind of behind the scenes. I want to pull the curtain back and show my process of not just making a prop, but making a complete costume. And not just a normal complete costume, but a costume that would be kind of more worthy of a client commission or a competition piece. Because when you look at, cosplay and costuming in general, there's lots of different types, and everybody can cosplay in their own way. Some people cosplay by making something within 2 days just to wear it to the con, to run around with their friends, and that's fine, that's fantastic. The way that I cosplay isn't actually by cosplaying at all. That I enjoy the fabrication and the build process of cosplay more than the wearing of costumes. Anyone that knows me knows that I will have any of my friends wear one of my costumes before I will, and it's because that's not the part that I enjoy. It's not the part that I have the most fun with. I love the engineering, I love the artistic side to it, I love taking something from a video game or from social media and creating it in the real world. A lot of times the stuff that I build is from video games, and I've worked with a lot of different companies over the years. And that sometimes is very, very difficult because there's a lot of clipping that goes on in video games, and where arms or armor will kind of disappear into the body to make it function inside the game. As cosplayers and as makers, we have to take all that and make it real world. All right, how is an actor going to wear this and actually have it work at a convention or in a commercial or at a competition? And so hopefully in this video, you'll kind of see like how I go about my selection process of choosing a costume and everything that goes into that. So you're not just picking the costume, you are, but then from that, you're also thinking about how is this going to work on a human body? How much detail is on it? What's the overall silhouette? Why am I doing this? Is it for a competition, a commission, or like the dwarf here, is it just a personal project that I want to take on? Which is usually the easiest of all of them, because with the decisions for this, I just have to answer to myself, which I tend to be the worst critic. So to do this whole process, I figured I'm going to do one of my bucket list builds. And you guys know me, when I build stuff, it's not necessarily the most popular thing that's out there. I build stuff that I absolutely love, because if you're going to do something like this for a competition, you better love it, because you're probably going to be with this thing for a couple of months and a couple hundred hours. So I decided that I finally want to make a Warhammer Dwarf Ironbreaker. And this is special to me because it harkens back years and years and years before cosplay. I was a miniature painter, and that's what I did during college to make money. I took commissions, I sold stuff on eBay, and so Warhammer in specific is very, very near and dear to my heart. Plus, I love the dwarves. I also figured if I'm going to make another costume that is pretty detailed and kind of over the top, I want it to fit me, just like my other ones do. And luckily, I already have the body type of a dwarf. So I'm not very tall, I'm kind of squatty. Perfect character for me. That always doesn't have to be the case, though. So the other costumes that I've made that have been competition winners have been massive costumes. Going back to the Warcraft orc that I made about 7 or 8 years ago now. So with this particular costume, he was huge. I'm again about 5'6", and this thing I'm about 6'5". And I had stilts, I had a muscle suit, I had everything that bulked out my body to give the silhouette of a full-size Warcraft orc. And at that point in time, it was really rare. I mean, you go to conventions nowadays and everybody and their brother has big, huge, awesome, amazing costumes. But 7-8 years ago, it wasn't really a thing that you saw all that often. So the other thing that goes into that is it wasn't on YouTube. You couldn't readily find the kind of blueprints or how to do all this. So a lot of us back in the day were engineering this stuff on our own. And that's the great thing about all the costumes I've ever built. They're all on my website. You can go check those out. And every single costume I've ever done has a full, at least pictorial, step-by-step walkthrough of kind of the steps that I took to put it together. So the next major costume that I had created was, again, a massive over-the-top, body-changing costume for TwitchCon, and that was my Gears of War Theron Guard. Again, not the most popular character out there. It's not a cog warrior. It's not one of the main bad guys, but it's one of those things when I pick a costume, there are lots of different criteria that I look at that I figure that's going to be the one I'm going to make. And especially if it's for a competition, because what does the silhouette look like? How massive is this thing? What am I going to have to do to give myself arm and leg extensions, muscle suits? What is the amount of detail that is on this? And like, it's not just plain armor. He's got all these little rivets and all these extra little things that draw your eye all around the piece. You're not just focused on the head or the shoulders. You want to look at every square inch of this particular character. And I want to do that also with this guy. So one of the first things I do when I'm thinking about a costume that I'm going to create, again, something that I'm going to spend months and hundreds of hours on, is what is really my end goal for this? What do I want to create? Is it something that calls back to something in my past? Is it something that is new, that is out there, but I really, really love what it is? So what is the overall goal? And again, are you just wearing this for fun, or is it for a client? Are you competing in it? What level of detail do I have to add into this piece to make it a final version? Now, when it comes to, let's say, my Warhammer Dwarf here, again, a character from a game from 30 plus years ago, not necessarily the coolest thing that's out there right now. It's no Marvel or new DC or new series that's hitting the web. But when it comes to a character like this, the first thing you want to do is, of course, you want to get your reference images. Now, when I'm building something from a video game, which I've worked with lots of different video game companies over the years, and so they'll either give me files or they'll send me screenshots of these particular characters. Same thing like with the Theron Guard. I was able to go to that part in the game, find the character, and do screenshots of him from lots of different angles. Plus, I also was gifted one of the action figures so I could make my own custom ruler, scale everything based off of that, so I knew that everything was nice and proportional. And that's a big part to, I think, competition style cosplays. It's great if you have a bunch of details on there, but being in proportion, I feel, is even more important than that. Now, when I'm making something like a dwarf from a miniature game, of course, I have the miniatures themselves, but I also have lots of awesome reference materials. I've got some of the old army books from back in the day, and these are full of all kinds of amazing art that necessarily I'm not going to get on the miniature, right? So I've got a little tiny miniature, but I've got these beautiful paintings of all these different dwarves in here. And with a character like this, I'm going to take a lot of different reference images from a lot of different sources. So I've got my miniatures, I've got my books, and of course I have the internet. When it comes to all of these internet photos that I found, which I amassed probably 50 to 60 different reference images for the dwarves themselves, plus also the individual weapons and helmets. And then what I will do is I create a page in Photoshop that has all of these laid out at once, because in my shop I have multiple screens that are off to the side, and so I'm constantly referencing different types of images. Now, if it's something where it has to be this exactly, I'll have then a turnaround of that particular helmet or body style. But if it's something like this, where I've got a ton of different references all in one, I'm constantly looking at, all right, what do I like here versus here? And it's something that can always be evolving as well. So with this particular helmet, I made a prototype. I always make a prototype for almost every single piece that you see on my social media or on YouTube. And that's so I can see kind of how it's going to go together before I do the final version. Because again, if I'm just making one of these, it's not as big a deal. But since I make free templates for you guys to put it together as well, not only do I have to make it once, but it has to be easy enough that hundreds of people can remake this again and again and again without having any issues. But as you can see here, my prototype, it's not necessarily the best, right? But it doesn't need to be. It gives me the overall scale of how big the helmet's going to be, some of the details that I would like to have on the helmet, even if I don't use them in the final version. It's still here so I can get a general idea. And even though this was my prototype and I have some aspects of it that transfer into the final version, you can see there's things that I obviously changed because I liked this better than this, and that's constantly going back to my references that are off screen. Also, sometimes that will just come into play of how it's all going to function too. Again, this is based off of a miniature. The miniature is short and squatty, which so am I, but it's broader than a normal human. So when I'm looking at the dwarf here, right, I know that with my body type, my overall frame is pretty good. I don't need to add any additional arm extensions, leg extensions to this. Now, what I am going to have to do is the helmet has to be bulked up some. I'm going to have to bulk up his arms, his hands, and of course, his gut, because despite the fact that I'm chubby, I do not have a dwarf gut yet. And so with this, a lot of it comes into the play of, all right, how do I go ahead and scale all of this to my body? And I do that by creating a duct tape dummy. Now, this is something that I had done years and years and years ago, all the way back to my Warcraft orc. And with this, I'm able to then look at everything, scale it properly. Now, if you don't have your own duct tape dummy, of course, have a friend come over and help you out. Some people that are lucky enough to have mannequins or dress forms fit their overall body style, that's another great way to do that. From there, I'll take my duct tape dummy, and to start off all the armor, I'll usually do some kind of an understructure skeleton. And I do this using 1-inch foam strips just to give myself an overall idea of size and scale. Now, when I work with some of the other clients that are out there, so let's say like the Elden Ring armor that I'd made for Bandai, that was modeled by my brother, who doesn't live too far away, so he was able to come over, and I was able to hold all the armor pieces up to him in the beginning, and then later on during the fabrication process, we were able to strap everything to him just to test mobility. So I put on piece by piece before I finished it completely and say, hey, can you move your arms? Can you move your waist? Can you move your legs? Because as cool as it is to have an insane amount of details on something, if you can't move or if you have problems with overall mobility, it's not a good thing in the end, especially for competitions when you're having to walk across the stage. What all of this will do is transform my body into a silhouette that resembles more of a dwarf. Even though, again, I may still be about 5'6", 5'7" in the costume, if photos are taken of it, it's going to appear as though all of this is proportional. And that's a big key when it comes to making costumes that are especially for, for competitions, is because you don't look at just the details themselves. You look at the proportions, the overall silhouette to this character. So in this first step, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, is choosing your character. Why are you choosing the character? The overall silhouette of the character, the amount of detail you're doing with the character, and then what's your overall goal? Is this for a client? Is this for a commission? Or is this to compete in? Or is it just for fun? And all of those come into play because, again, if you're going to be spending hundreds of hours with this creation, putting it all together, you better love it, because otherwise you're just going to get frustrated in the end and you're going to abandon your project. Now, I'm pretty good about finishing my projects, but I still have a couple that are down in my storage area that I know are not quite right, and until I get them to that point, I'm not going to finish them. Or they were one of those things where, hey, this is really popular right now, let's go ahead and build it, but then like after I got into it, I was like, you know what, I'm just not enjoying this process. And if you're not enjoying it, there's no point in doing it, right? Everyone says, I wish I could build props and costumes every day like you do all day. That's not always the case. Sometimes I have projects where I'm not really into it, but this is my job. I have to finish those up, versus ones like this where it's a passion project. I'm like, you know what? Even though I'm having a bad day, stuff may not be going right tomorrow, I'm going to come back, fresh eyes. I'm going to start again, look at all these problems that I have. I might even think of something at 2 or 3 in the morning when I wake up and go, that's the solution. That's what I need to fix this. And then I come back out refreshed and I start again. So in the next video, I'm going to start to go over the construction of the helmet itself. And again, every single piece that'll be on this character, I hope to have a video that will kind of break it down, but also have the templates available. So if you want to build one of these, again, just like all my other props videos that are out there, you'll have that opportunity. Even if you're not building this particular character, I feel a lot of the techniques and tricks that I do in these videos can easily be translated into other costume projects that are out there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you for the next one.